Hey everyone, Dr. Jess Nerren here. I'm here to talk today with faculty about how accommodations get assigned, right? Sometimes we get an accommodation letter and we don't necessarily know the process behind how we got that letter. So that's a question I get in the office, and it's a really valid question. So I wanted to answer a little bit more for you, so that way you know how that accommodation letter got to you, okay? So there's three major things to think about, and those are interactive process, right? Functional limitation and educational eligibility. Okay. And so this is what we do every single day, all day long here at SSD. And let me explain to you a little bit more about what that means. All right. So the very first thing that happens when someone gets in touch with our office is they come and they do an appointment with us where they engage in what we call an interactive process with our disability counselors. Okay. So this is, using the research terms, this is like thick, rich description. And then some, right? It's very qualitative, is very descriptive. It is very granular in detail, because we need to get under exactly what it looks like for our students and where they have something called a functional limitation. And a functional limitation means this, okay? If our classroom is a table and everyone can get to the table, then there is no functional limitation getting to the table. But if everyone except two or three people can get to the table, and these two or three people are struggling before they even get to the table, then they might have a functional limitation that we need to understand through that interactive process, so that way we know what those functional limitations are, right? Is it, I transpose letters and they all move on the page. Okay, that's a functional limitation, right? I have really high anxiety and I'm having panic attacks in class related to my mental health. That can be a functional limitation. I have mobility needs and I need a different chair to sit on in class. That's a functional limitation, right? And so once we understand someone's functional limitations, that's their educational eligibility. That educational eligibility and that functional limitation is what gets us to the accommodations, right? So if someone's like, I can't fit in the desk, right? Then their functional limitation is that they can't fit in the desk. The accommodation is a different chair that they can fit in. So every single one of these ties together. It's kind of like when we build our syllabus, right? We've got learning objectives, and then we have our modules, and they tie to the learning objectives. We have activities and assignments in the modules that tie back to the learning objectives. It's exactly that thought process that everything ties together, right? The accommodations tie to the functional limitations, and the functional limitations come from that interactive process. So if you ever have questions, sometimes because of confidentiality, we can't answer them. Sometimes students have already signed releases where we could share, right? And we always check that, and we always are very, very, very careful about confidentiality, but we can't even go to the students and say, hey, if this comes up, or if you have the need to have, additional clarity, we can go back to the student and say things like, hey, we think it might be a good idea to share a little bit more with your professor. Would you like to share a little bit more? Would you like to sign a voluntary release, so that way we can share more on your behalf? Because it might help to move whatever it is that we're all working on together forward. And typically, like a lot of folks, they say yes to that. Some folks have trauma about disclosing, and it is their right to say no to that. However, no matter what the outcome is, we want to put faculty's mind at ease that an accommodation comes from understanding deeply the functional limitations of the student who's being accommodated through a very involved interactive process. So that's it for this video. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one.